coming up next. The first is all about the digital shifts coming up in the media industry, and then we've got our big keynote. Katarina Johnson-Thompson will be talking to Ade Adepitan in just 40 minutes' time. But first, I'm really excited to welcome our panel to the stage. Jordan, can you tell us a little bit about who we're about to welcome?
Yeah, of course. Like you said, it's all about the big digital shifts that will change your media strategy. We've got the media leaders, Jack Benjamin, talking to the incredible Irin Rahman, Chief Data and Technology Officer at Wavemaker, Russell Ball, Global Program Director for Reckitt, Sean Betts, Chief Product and Technology Officer of OMG UK, and Ellie Lane, Head of Client Strategy at Quantcast.
This session is all about digital shifts, specifically 3 digital shifts that we want to talk about in great depth. And it includes some things that we've heard about over the past 2 days, including data, including retail media, including AI, of course. But I wanted to start actually by narrowing for each of you down from 3 big digital shifts down to what one shift is getting the most attention from your clients or that you otherwise personally find most interesting. And we'll start with Russell, just to my left.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Jack. I think retail media, not only because it just we've seen a lot of the charts analysis in the last couple of days, how much of a growth area it is, but so it represents new opportunities for us, new touch points to reach consumers. But it's also the impact it will have on op model and org structure. Obviously, historically, the kind of sales team, Salesforce focusing on that, but you start to see that merging of media and sales coming together. So I think that's why it's an area of being big interest, because it has such big opportunities, I think.
Irin?
For me, it would be stronger strategies when it comes to various different data-led endeavors. So that also includes things like retail media as well. But the requirement for, or the desire for in the market to have a connected strategy is something that we're seeing a lot more.
Ellie?
For me, I think it's the AI and machine learning as it applies to the buying of digital media, optimization and measurement. And by that I mean kind of a shift in the role of traditional traders. So do you need traditional traders anymore? Can they become, and hopefully the answer is yes, they should be becoming less in the weeds of day-to-day trading and stepping back a bit more and looking at the insights that the machine learning is exposing to them.
Sean, you just gave a big presentation about AI.
So I'm not going to say it.
No?
No, I'm not going to allow myself. Mine was actually really dull, but it's really important. And as I said, I'm become a lot more interested in over the last couple of years is actually the operational side of everything that we do. It's really complicated. The landscape's shifting so quickly. And I think a lot of the reasons why we can't get the value out of the data that we all sit on is because we don't actually have the right processes in place to do that yet. So I think the operational side of the business really needs to catch up with where we've got to with the technology side of the business.
I want to ask a bit about first-party data. We've heard a lot about data. I feel like data's been a big word over the past 2 days. And I'm curious, Google said they're not deprecating cookies anymore. Does that matter to anyone on this panel? Is the cat out of the bag already?
I don't think it changes the sort of journey we're on. Or most, been a few events recently, and everyone's still very much focused on first-party data. And with Reckitt, we've been on a journey of that for a few years now. And the volume and the quality of that data is very different across our brands and categories. Many FMCG brands have kind of on that journey as well, similar position to us. But I think that when it comes down to first-party data itself, there is the question asked is the quantity and the quality of that data. How you acquire that data really kind of impacts effectiveness, and so what's the right value exchange to acquire that data in the first place. And I think what's important to understand when it comes to that conversation around data is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. It's not, I think, again, we've listened to some of the talks earlier about media channel selection. It's not a binary thing of do 100% do this or 100% do that. It's more nuanced, and you have to have a mix. So I guess if I can describe it, kind of data agnostic, because what the data, our data needs and the data that we use, it really just has to serve what we're trying to do as a brand and what our strategy is, what our objective we're trying to achieve. So we're not beholden to one data source. It has to be a blend.
What are clients telling you, Irene?
Well, clients are essentially asking the question of like, same thing, what you're saying doesn't matter, whether we have cookies or we don't have cookies. And I think, agencies are part to blame for some of the misnomers around importance of cookies versus, was it cookie apocalypse? I think it was at one point being told. And I think there is the misnomer that bothers me the most is that, it's so important for targeting. To be honest, contextual targeting is far more effective and far more reasonable, and the easiest way to explain it is that, if anybody has purchased anything on Amazon Marketplace, like, I don't know, a toilet seat recently, and for about 6 weeks, I was retargeted on just toilet seats everywhere. I'm just like, I've already purchased it, don't need that. That's one example of using, cookie-based targeting versus contextual, that actually if that person has already purchased that, was the next thing that they'll need. And it's just, I think from a best practice point of view, we made a really big effort into educating the community into what is better when it comes to contextual versus cookie-led. So I feel like I'm in the same boat as you, that we are still on the journey. I don't think that's going to change. Plus, the regulations are constantly evolving. I also happen to sit on the consultancy for government boards, and I can tell you that it might seem like right now, okay, what's happening with cookies, but something in GDPR will very soon come to be, which will make it very important that we stay honest on how we target versus what used to be the case before.
Sean, what happens if your client doesn't have any first-party data? Or not useful first-party data?
I think that's okay. We forget how recent clients having useful first-party data for advertising has been. And it's something we talk about quite a lot, and there's actually not a huge amount of evidence that the additional cost of using first-party data is worth it for the increased effectiveness that you get. There is in very certain specific situations. And yes, it can allow you to join up your messaging from a CRM point of view to your paid media point of view. But in terms of that kind of efficiency and effectiveness trade-off, there's actually not as much evidence out there that it's a better thing to do than a lot of people think. So I'm a big fan of other methods of targeting as well. You talked about contextual, and that's come on leaps and bounds in the last few years. I'm a big fan of geo-targeting. I think that is an untapped data source that you can get really granular with now. You can do some really interesting things with, and it allows you to join up kind of insights, activation, and measurement all in one kind of end-to-end kind of suite of capabilities. But there's no one-size-fits-all. We have to be able to use all of these different types of data and techniques to be able to build the best campaigns for our clients. And the other thing I'd add as well, which is not answering your question, but it's important, is that first-party data isn't always names and addresses and emails and phone numbers. First-party data can be your site analytics, it could be your stock levels, it could be the availability of appointments in store. Like, there's so much value in the non-identifiable first-party data that I think is way more exciting than the stuff that most people think about when they talk about first-party data.
Can I just build on Sean's point around the geo-targeting, because I think it's really, really important. It's a great example. Finish is our Reckitt dishwashing detergent brand. And we think about data, it's really just about signals of intent. So one of the most important things for Finish is understanding, does this person household have a dishwasher? And so we've invested a lot of money on TV and can continue to do so. But there's an argument to be had when we're in that kind of broadcast medium. I don't know if people are aware, in the UK, less than, I think it's about 45-50% of households have a dishwasher. So arguably, you say when we're in that broadcast medium, half the people we're communicating to can't actually buy a product. There's one caveat to that, though, within linear TV, that we buy trade on a specific audience, so there's a lot of free wastage there, and that's why we've seen the effectiveness from TV still being kind of really strong. But with those signals of trying to identify, okay, can we find a high-intent sort of household that might own a dishwasher? We use geo-targeting to do that. A few years ago, in my role, we, as a program director, partner with, I'm in the global role, we partner with markets around test, learn and scale. It's quite a common concept. And so we used geo-targeting to try and identify these households more likely to own a dishwasher. Very privacy-friendly, very future-proof. Those are kind of two things that we always is front of mind. And it was incredibly effective. Now, we create a kind of principle. The principle is simple, is how can you think about ways you can identify someone who's more likely to own a dishwasher. We did that with geo-targeting, and we took that to other markets to scale it. Now, they couldn't replicate exactly what we did in the UK, but they took the principle and found solutions to do that. And we do something similar with, we have healthcare brands, Strepsils and Nurofen, Dettol, many others. So trying to look at areas of higher cold flu incidence can be really, really effective as well. So I think geo-targeting is, I think especially with contextual as well, it's like what's old is new again, but it can be really, really effective.
Could I just add a bit to that? Geo-targeting is a really effective technique because you're removing IDs to postcodes, essentially. You're changing the token of how you identify where to show your ad. The thing that I think a lot of our clients in the community that we seem to overlook, and this kind of brings back to the example I made, that knowing where the demand is, knowing what the demand is, doesn't necessarily mean that they will still purchase or spend money with your brand. Knowing what your brand message is and what you want your customer base to do, in order to do that, you have to understand your customer really well, which comes to your point of understand your audience insight. And they all work together, and hence why a very strong strategic spine becomes really important for the use case for first-party data. Is it valuable, is it not? Say, for example, if you're a mass market product, doesn't matter if it's something that everybody will require. Coming back to everyday items such as whether it's a dishwasher, whether it's a packet of crisps or something like that, people will buy a packet of crisps. So knowing specifically the location of, okay, that person lives there and buys crisps, right? I can do a mass market campaign and still get probably better result instead of being specifics versus a particular type of car or a particular type of baby food. That is something where your first-party data can become really useful. So it's knowing your brand, why people interact with your brand, then going with what technique you're going to use is probably the best way to almost structure out the best use case for first-party data set, rather than just going what's, in the market. There are so many out-of-the-box solutions that and we'll enrich your data to 3 million, 20 million extra data points. Okay.
A lot of the biggest providers of data are retailers, and retail media has been huge over the past year, lots of growth. I'm curious, obviously they have data, they have ad inventory, but what more would all of you like to see from retail media companies in terms, what do you need, what do your clients need from them beyond we can sell you data and we can sell you inventory? Do you want more information about what's in that data to help you out?
I'll take that, because as soon as I identify...
Yeah, you're the retail media guy.
Yeah, no. I think that, to your point, it's better audience understanding, and insights around the audience. So I think that it's often talked about retail media, certainly this treasure trove of data, and people actually, really buying your products or buying the category. And for sure, I think that's going to be a key element for lots of advertisers. It'd be very, very efficient part of the campaign to say, okay, we're going exactly after these people that are buying our brand today or buying our competitors. But I think that's quite a limited, quite finite. What I'd like to see more from the retail media providers, and look, we've obviously Amazon is at massive scale now, and lots of the other partners are kind of catching up. It's still quite nascent. Is to lift the lid up a little bit to say, okay, the people that are buying our category today, what else are they doing on your site? What other products are they buying? How can we think about adjacent categories that might help us inform new audiences to go after? Because we're in the, a key focus for us is growth, is household penetration, bringing new people into the category. If we're only going after people that are buying our products today, are buying the competitors today, that's quite limited. So I'd like to see more insights, around that. Many of the platforms are scaling up in terms of inventory as well. So you've seen lots of acquisitions. Walmart in the US buying Vizio. So that's great from a scale perspective, a kind of multi-channel approach. But I think the audience insight is the thing that I really would be asking for.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a lot of the big-scaled retail media partners that we work with have got an incredible amount of sales data that they're willing to share, but not the audience data that goes with it at the level of granularity that would make it super useful. And I'm not saying that we need it at an ID level, but I think we need much richer audience data to go alongside the sales data to make it amazing. It's good at the moment. We have to make quite a lot of audience assumptions when we're looking at it, and there's an ongoing question in the industry about how you actually match audiences into that sales data. And yes, you can use a clean room, and yes, you can onboard your first-party data, but match rates are a nightmare. So the audience side of it is the bit that I think really needs to get unlocked to see the growth continue. It will continue because every retailer is starting to monetize their data, but in the next 2 or 3 years, that'll start to stall out if we don't see the audience, kind of the sophisticated side of the audience come with it as well.
Retail media isn't really something that I touch, but I'm interested to understand how you're organising yourselves around that now, because it seems, as you say, there's lots of new networks popping up all the time. And do you have to buy individually with each of them and understand their own product? Does that mean changes for your team?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fragmentation, right, which is quite a common problem. And so you see the likes of Criteo trying to create that kind of consolidation in the marketplace. I think that's why I highlighted earlier is that there's been that blurring of like whose budget, who should be owning that, who should be speaking, who owning the relationships. And we have a lot of teams now that kind of are more integrated, so they're having that one conversation. Because as the retail media networks offer that full funnel offering, absolutely one of the worst things we want to avoid is that duplication of audience and using 2 pots of budget to basically go after the same audience. So that's about collaboration and integration within teams, but also having the same KPIs and objectives as well. Again, in some of the sessions we talked about the importance of incrementality. So that's something we're really kind of focused on, having the right measurement capabilities as well. So I think there's still work to be done on that, but I think that's a big focus area, not only next year, but in the years to come as well.
I was going to say that it's something, the fragmentation is something that we're seeing a lot more. We're having clients coming to, up to us and our partners and going, oh, okay, how do I actually make my data, retail media data, available for media buying? And then the original thought of if a business sells product, they first think, oh, we'll have a portal of some sort or some sort of, customer-facing method, and we have to explain it to them that you're better off selling it on a data marketplace, whether it's a established one or, whichever one is available, versus creating a whole entire ecosystem to become a data seller. if that makes sense. So it's something that we try to explain that, if you're selling, I don't know, juice, don't try to become a data business. Just give it to the people who already have the infrastructure. And of course, there's the whole, how do you price it? How do you make it enriched? For a media buyer, we have to always, I have to agree with Sean here, is the better audience data, the better it is for us, and the easiest way to access / match. We will always want that. But then as a company, it becomes your onus to make that data as your product of income better, and then you're absolutely right, that you have to have a whole entire team almost looking after, okay, can I actually make my retail media data enriched? And if you're starting from zero, or if you're starting from the beginning of the journey, it's quite costly. So you have to bear in mind the cost for your clean rooms, cost for your database design and things like that. You have to keep that in mind. So our recommendation has always been better off, if you want to just test the waters, go with established data marketplace.
I want to move us on to the topic of AI, and I know that that's an umbrella term, and conversation around AI can get blah, to be completely frank. But Sean, you had a fantastic presentation earlier, and I wanted to actually ask a follow-up question about it, because you showed essentially that a lot of these AI models, if you're using them for marketing, they sound like they're really good at certain media channels and not so good at the other ones. And the ones that you pointed out were actually traditional channels, so publishing, out of home, and cinema. And that probably makes some sense, because if it's being trained on data that's on the internet, as you say in this country, then it would be biased toward digital channels. Is that a concern then? Like, could using biased AI models lead to media planning for digital channels more than traditional channels?
Yeah, it is. And I think that's why I'm so keen to be shining a light on it, because I don't think we're far off from starting to use generative AI in a nascent way to start helping us make some decisions about where we make our investments and what a campaign might look like and the structure of it. And it will start to break out of the kind of operational niche that generative AI is in right now in the next 12 to 18 months. And if you're going to let it do that, or you're going to build a platform around it, you need to understand the biases that sit within the model. Otherwise, they will come and bite you. And that's not, I don't think, well enough understood at the moment. And if I was to start thinking about using generative AI to help me with decision making in marketing right now, I would really want to test that model to understand the biases so I could compensate for them.
Mm.
Could you say that you could use the benefits of digital in a lot of ways for offline media? So obviously all the data that we have online, we know a lot more about people than we do in digital out of home, for example, or audio. And you can use all the benefits of digital and bring that to bear on those channels. Mm. Yes, there might be some biases, but is it better to have a small bias than no data to work with?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, and I've never said this out loud before in public, but for those industries that are kind of underrepresented in those models, I would be going to those frontier AI companies and saying, please train these models on all of this stuff we have that will make it better at understanding outdoor and cinema, etc. I think companies are very afraid of their data being used for training, but I think in certain instances it should be encouraged more. Mm. And that generative AI is a part of our future, whether people like it or not. And I think that if you spot that you're not well represented in that training data, you need to go and do something about it. And that's true for brands as well. I think we're going to get to a point in the next couple of years where a whole new discipline will spring up around marketing, specifically to help brands be better represented in how they're portrayed by these models. So I think it's important that people start to think about how their data is being surfaced in these models rather than just holding it back.
It's a risk of being left behind almost, and well,
it is kind of a risk of being left behind, but I think it's a bit more nuanced than that, which is a risk of being forgotten, which I think is far more dangerous, because being left behind, someone might notice that you've been left behind. Being forgotten, you're not even being thought about. And I think that's the danger, because I think more and more people will rely on these models for lots of different things. And if you're not even in there, you're not even going to be considered.
A lot of AI panels that I've sat on, that I've listened to, like to center the human element and the importance of the human element. I'm curious though, if I was a business and I was looking at, well, AI can create huge efficiencies, surely that would mean I can cut costs, and that could include people. And I'm curious, Ellie, what do you make of that argument? I mean, is there actual concern that you're sort of, as an industry, sleepwalking into an era in which a lot of people are going to need to quickly upskill and change their skills, or otherwise they might be forgotten?
I think it comes back to what I was saying earlier around kind of traders, for example. I think you're always going to need the human aspect, but it might mean that the role shifts a bit. I don't think it means like vastly retraining everyone. But for example, rather than having a trader doing repeatable tasks and trying to spot kind of human hypotheses in a lot of data, a machine can just do that a lot better. And instead, that human's time is better spent, I think, looking at the insights that data exposes. So for example, if you're seeing a correlation in data between your brand, your brand consumers, and an emerging artist, only a human can see that and make the decision to then go and do a collaboration with that artist, and suddenly you're creating growth opportunities.
A question I wanted to ask about AI that's much more specific is about social media companies and tech platforms using AI to not necessarily replace people, but to make your job as easy as possible to spend money with them. We've heard about them already today. They all have Max or Plus in the name, which I always find quite funny from a branding perspective. But Meta has tools to make your performance better using AI. Google does. Pinterest released them just 2 weeks ago. TikTok just came out with new tools within the past 7 days. Are these tools actually useful to the everyday use? And it sounds like they're trying to meet demand. So surely there must be some demand from the market. Irene, what do you make of all these different tools? And are you worried that they're almost going to make it too easy for you to spend?
To answer that, I would make a nostalgia comment. Does anybody remember how it used to be back in the very old days, and my age is going to come out at this point, when Google first started doing Google AdWords, and how we had to type everything in, and naming convention was not a thing, and creating campaigns was really hard work, and then they automated even more. And I would say that's a natural evolution of these platforms. This new movement into incorporating AI a lot more and automating a lot of the processes, this is no different to, I would say, 10, 15 years ago. If you compare the rate of change, I would say it's sticking to what how technology change should happen. So no, I'm not concerned. I kind of have to also give you a nod back to your earlier question about biases and, we are worried about that, there'll be cost cutting, efficiency building, and things like that. This happened. I just feel like that we as human beings keep forgetting that this has happened many a times in our lifetime, from printing to digital. Printing press, those people are not out of jobs or they haven't decided to migrate to a separate island away from everybody. We still have those jobs, we still have those skills, and same with here, that maybe we're not doing the manual task anymore, or how we used to optimize before, we're not going to be as hands-on in some areas, but we'll probably put a lot more time and effort into more creative aspect of it, or QA side of things, where the human eye would be the last thing that, before a campaign goes live, we actually do use our intelligence, human intelligence, to actually have that last say, actually, yeah, that is correct or that is not correct. So there are application of our time that we will be saving by going through automation. They might be applied in a different way to what our standard method or understanding right now. I just feel like we can't be apprehensive of change. I think gotta just accept it and carry on doing things that will add value, rather than just taking an opposing view. And I do see that a lot, that there are many conversations every day, I'm sure all of us get into that, if AI is going to automate anything, what are the people going to do? I'm sure they said the same thing when DoubleClick was launched or when mobile came into play and things like that. So I'm definitely not a naysayer. I'm very much okay, we'll see how we can adopt it and use it for our benefit.
The only pushback I would offer is there's perhaps fewer people working on printing presses today than there may have been.
You say that. I do it as a hobby.
Okay.
I just want to answer the demand side of your question, because that's really interesting, I think, because I think it's very easy for people who work on big blue chip clients in large agency groups to think that what Meta and Google and all the other digital platforms are building is for us. They're not. These products are for the SMEs that book directly on those platforms, that don't have a huge amount of resource, that don't have a team to curate their media and advertising campaigns. And that's quite honestly where the majority of all of those digital platforms' revenues come from. Now, obviously, they're exciting new technologies, and those platforms want to bring them to agencies and to large clients as well, but they're not actually built for us. And whilst I think there is a huge amount of value in those approaches, and I think it frees up the teams to focus on much higher order tasks, to think about strategy, to focus more on insights, there are issues with those kinds of approaches because we don't have the transparency that we would want around why those decisions are being made by those algorithms that a lot of our clients ask us for. So the demand side of it is really, really important. I think there's absolutely a place for those approaches for a lot of SMEs and for a lot of blue chip clients. But I think what we're going to see over the next 5 years is a bit of a two-lane approach where you're going to have some clients that just want to be able to run campaigns as quickly and easily as possible, not have to worry about the curation or the controls on it, and just want to see the performance out the back of it. And I think you'll see another group of clients that are much more interested in craft and much more interested in the impact that it's having on the consumer, not just the performance. And so I think these products will find their place from a demand point of view over time as we kind of mature our approach around them.
And to add to that, I would say Rocco's presentation earlier about Google and how in the Max approach they kind of have the freedom to give preference to their own network. And I guess we need to keep everyone honest as well. If it's completely black box, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes when it comes to your own stuff.
Yeah, Russell, how do you know what to scale if something's a black box and you don't necessarily?
I mean, that is one of the challenges. When we're trying to scale what's working across markets, and we're doing a lot of tests with these kind of new capabilities, and the proof will be in the pudding. I think the challenge, if it does work, we want to replicate success, and these are key partners for us. So, and they're by far no means the enemy, and if we find something that works, then we're empowered to then connect with them and try to dig a little bit deeper into why something did work, because we want to then scale it again. At the end of the day, if they can give us some of that learning, that's going to be better for them, better for our business, and if I can expand that, or we can expand that across multiple markets, that's going to be great for us as well.
Would you actually expect them to open up a little bit more and give more transparency with what's working and what's not?
I think that will come with time, and I think with more demand from clients, because I think every single client that I ever speak to who've tested these new kind of generative AI or even traditional AI kind of capabilities want to understand them in much more detail than they currently can. I don't think that will manifest itself in transparency as I think of it. I don't think we're going to see the weights and the algorithms and the decisions that the models are making. But what I would expect to see and would really like to see in the next couple of years is better, more granular reporting coming out of the back of them so that we can understand not necessarily the intricacies, and I'm not saying that I want to see, the competitive kind of advantage that they've got in their algorithms so that we can recreate it, but we do need to give our clients a lot more accountability around why these models are performing in the way that they are.
I think it's part of the effectiveness as well, right? When we're trying to measure it, it's it's in the platform organization's benefit to help measure effectiveness better. In order to do that, they have to expose some of those things. Oh, this is the reason why this is happening, rather than just keeping it fully black box anyway. So.
The one thing that's consistent across all the platforms is we hear from them, give us more creative, give us more asset variation. And obviously they're starting to offer those kind of tools. But I think that's, if you start to work with these new capabilities, the creative and variety of creative and volume of creative is something that you have to have, otherwise it's not really going to work.
We've only got a couple minutes left, and I want to get a little bit future-gazy. I mean, we have been throughout much of this conversation, but explicitly future-gazy. It's crystal ball time. If 2022 was the year of metaverse and the NFTs, which, well, we all know how that ended up, and 2023, perhaps the year of Gen AI really starting to kick off, 2024, of course, still AI, but also retail media, especially having a really big year this year. I'm curious, what will 2025 be the year of? And Sean, I'll put you on the spot first, and we'll work our way back to me.
I want it to be the year of geo, but I don't think that's going to happen. That's what I'd really like it to be, because I just think there's so much untapped potential there. I think the other big area, and we've been talking about this quite a lot internally, is this is a bit left field, is gaming. I think that's really maturing now, and it's been a little bit like the year of mobile that never came. Like we've been saying, oh, it's going to be the year of gaming next year, and it's never come. But I do think there's some really interesting things happening in that space that will start to hit more of the kind of mainstream advertising industry next year. So I'm going to go with those two things, which are a little bit left field.
Sure. Ellie?
I will say probabilistic measurement, not overly sexy, but I think it's really important that everyone gets more comfortable with that. I think it was previously kind of thought as a bad alternative to deterministic, but in a privacy-centric world, I think it's essential. And right now, it feels like it's only really available to kind of bigger brands that maybe have access to media mix modeling. And I think bringing that down so it's available to the masses, maybe via vendors or other solutions, I think that's where we're headed.
Mine is going to be something that no one's probably heard of. Virtual audience insights. So this is something that quite newish in the sense that we had something like this before, but with the emergence of Gen AI and AI technologies, it's much easier to model audience behavior, and there are virtual audiences now pretty much built into various platforms, but I think brands and businesses will get more and more aware of virtual audiences.
Russell, you have the last word.
Oh, wow. We've talked a lot about data and technology. I'll offer a slightly opposite view of, if I say the year of upskilling, because just hearing about all these kind of new opportunities, if we might have a good understanding in the room, but across organisation, if we only get traction and progress if other people have a certain level of understanding. And so, making sense of Gen AI capabilities, these kind of new touch points, virtual audiences. I mean, you get traction when you speak a common language within the company. And it's not to say that other functions in the company need to understand the mechanics of DV360 and all these kind of key platforms and stuff, but they need to equip with enough understanding to ask the right questions. And within Reckitt we've done a lot of capability building in the last couple of years, but I think that's going to be a big focus moving forward as well. And so I think that's going to be a key thing.
2025, the year of understanding.
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting emotional.
Well, thank you all so much. Audience, please join me in thanking. What a fantastic panel.